Good morning. This is day 2 of recording myself to improve my speech. Today I'll try to speak a bit louder along with avoiding filler and non-words. Again, continuing with the two books that I'm currently reading, The School of Life by Alain de Botton and The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. In The School of Life, in the subsection on relationships, the essay I read today talked about a theory of not parent, of partner as a child. Now, this theory details that adults are deceptively, their looks deceptively make us perceive them as grown ups. And this is very elusive because it hides the inner child in them. We are very good at being extremely kind and charitable to children. When a child throws a tantrum or reacts very instinctively, we do not perceive that and think that they are malevolent or unkind or capricious by nature. We come up with some kind of very charitable interpretation, being uh, that they are tired, that they are confused, that they don't know what to do next. And so that is manifesting itself in these maladaptive behaviors. However, because it's so hard to link an adult's appearance and their mature features, physical features, with their childlike psyche, because their psyche evolved from their childhood, it is so hard to offer them the same charitable interpretation. However, we would benefit from realizing that very few things stem from actual malevolence, and a lot of it can be explained through this childlike not knowing what to do, being extremely anxious, confused, tired, exhausted, and therefore it benefits us a lot by offering a more charitable interpretation. And specifically, this is true when it comes to our romantic partners. And this leads on to the next essay, which talks about love and education. One of the sadder influences of the romantic ideology that stem from romanticism is that we should accept people for who they are, especially our partners. That to desire a change in their behavior is to not love them for who they are, and so therefore is not really true love. Now, this is sadly very flawed because what it could be, what it possibly could be, is an invitation for improvement and an invitation for teaching. The essay details how love can be an act of teaching and being taught. When one points out a flaw, a behavioral flaw, a character flaw, a habitual flaw in another person that they care about, what is that stemming from? Is it really an attempt to point out a flaw so that they can make themselves feel superior? Probably not, because they care about that person. It is rather a very genuine attempt to turn that person into someone that they admire. And that is a very authentic and beautiful aspiration to have. The author makes the claim that the Greeks actually got it right way before the Romantics influenced us in this way. The Greeks claimed that love really is, when you love a person, what you're doing is really identifying the subset of their characteristics that you admire and that you're fascinated by, that you're drawn to. And if love is interpreted in this fashion, it makes so much sense that this wanting your partner to improve is actually an invitation to enhance and to gain new characteristics that make you admire them. And it goes likewise, analogously, to on the other direction as well. You too are invited to enhance and gain new characteristics that make your partner admire you. However, the ways in which we should carry this out are somewhat complicated to do in the spurs of the moment. We have a tendency to deliver the diagnosis the moment the insight strikes our minds. However, that might not be the most relevant way to help our partners. It isn't the case that we should address the problem at hand the moment it arrives. Maybe wait an hour or 2 days, and when your partner is well rested, when they are in a more receptive state of mind, approach them. Deliver to them those diagnoses in a kind, understanding manner. Harking back to the previous mini topic that we were on, partner as a child theory, it is the case that when you approach a child, if you simply demolish them for the kind of behavior they're doing without showing any understanding that their behaviors are very explainable and understandable, the child will simply not listen. And as childlike as adults are, if we do not receive a genuine recognition that it is very difficult for us to change and that our behaviors have an explanation, it is very difficult for us to enter a pedagogical state of learning, least of all when it's delivered by someone we deeply care about. So, that was a neat connection between two separate essays of partner as a child and love and education. Very unique perspective, which I did like. Moving on to the psychology of money. Today was chapter 5, and it talked about the difference between getting wealthy and staying wealthy. I remember there's a YouTube channel I used to watch, not channel really, some shorts of that channel that I've watched in the past semester, which highlighted the difference between getting wealthy and staying wealthy. And it was nice to read it in a more well articulated and concrete manner in this chapter. It grows on the previous chapter of compound interest in an interesting way. Well, we just went through why compound interest is so amazing, how this exponential growth can do wonders. What allows this wonder to take place? It would be if you don't make decisions that are going to destroy the base of wealth that you are creating. It isn't the case that when you plant an oak tree, in a year something magnificent is going to happen. Maybe in 10 years something of worth does manifest, but in 50 years it's absolutely astounding. It's hard to even imagine what it was a few decades ago. The same way, our appetite for risk and optimism and pessimism needs to be needs to pass through the lens of what can best lead to compounding of our resources. I drew an interesting parallel between what the author talks about in terms of wealth and how you should go about taking risks with what we study in computer science, in algorithms specifically, which is the difference between a greedy approach of solving a problem and a dynamic programming or DP approach. Now, what greedy approach does is it searches for the locally optimal solution. which basically means here in this present moment, out of all the options I have, which one produces the most optimal result, I'll choose that. So you choose that option, and then in the next moment, t equals 0, now you're at t equals 1, you choose the next most optimal solution and you go onwards. Whereas DP strives for a globally optimal solution. You're not so much concerned on making the best choice right now, but overall. The author gives an example which I will probably not recall perfectly, but here I go. Where if it's a bull market, it would make more sense to not hold cash and invest in stocks. And so if cash is going to give you a return of 1% and stocks give you a rate of 10 return of 10%, that's amazing, invest. But if in the long term, uh, cash actually ends up avoiding ruin and ensuring survival versus that stock investment, then the return on that cash investment is much more than that 1%. So in this example, that cash is the globally optimal solution, whereas the stocks might have been the greedy option, which was interesting to read. A few points that he highlights in bullet points, which I did like, was, hold on, yeah, the notion that we need to have a backup plan. Now, if he had simply written that we need to have a backup plan, I would have glossed over it because it's a sentence that we come around so frequently that it loses its touch. It becomes, as they say, a platitude. Plans are only relevant if they can if they can stand their own in reality, in real time. So many plans are only suited in the realm of abstraction. The moment they meet with reality, they crumble. And that is exactly why the most important part of a plan is to plan on what to do when that plan doesn't work out. And knowing this can be one of the most financially liberating things to do. It isn't the case that when you plan on some investment giving you a certain amount of returns, you end up in ruin when the negation of that plan ends up happening in real life. So, if you're banking on, if your plan is that this investment gives you an 8% return, you should plan such that even if it gives you 4% returns, you'll still be fine. And so, flavoring your optimism through the lens of an globally optimal approach and focusing on surviving and not going into ruin through chance encounters and the randomness of macroeconomics. If you can simply do that, then survival will ultimately lead to thriving via compound interest. So this is how I think the author connected the previous chapter of compound interest with this psychology, this backdrop and a mindset to have so that compound interest can eventually occur. That's it for today. I'll see you tomorrow.